Welcome to the Voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. Well, I've been going through some of my explanation on how we should actually approach issues that we deal with in the church, and it's based on this detailed examination of conscience that I received for free along with a package from a ministry that is, I believe, Christian as opposed to Catholic, but it is supported by Catholics, including the Archdiocese of Denver. Now, there are other things that are very simple that are in here that should be simple and very self-explanatory, and that's good as well. So it says, in regards to against the first commandment, have I been involved in the occult, seances, Ouija board, worship of Satan, etc.? A lot of people don't understand that as sin. But why is it a sin? See, again, oh, well, I can't be involved in those things because I'm Catholic. Well, why can't you be involved in those things? The answer is simple. It is a form of idolatry. You are contacting what you were considering another source of, maybe you don't think of it as a divinity, but in a sense you are, and you're looking for that which God offers to you from someone else. Whether it's a seance, a Ouija board, worship of Satan is fairly obvious. I mean, if you've engaged in the worship of Satan and you have to be told by a detailed examination of conscience that that's wrong, you really did not learn anything. So let's go. All right. And then others are engaged in superstitious practices. A lot of people don't realize that Catholics don't belong looking up horoscopes. And people will ask me that all the time. They'll say to me, and what's your horoscope sign? And I always say, I don't have one. Now, if someone says, well, you are such and such, and I don't get into arguments over it. I just let it go. But when someone asks me, what is your horoscope sign? I always say, I don't have one. And I explain, I said, if you were to ask me what is my devotion in Hinduism, I would say, I don't have a devotion because I'm not a Hindu. Well, it's the same thing. I don't believe in horoscopes, therefore I don't have an astrological sign. And they'll say, well, everyone has to have one. And actually, no, I don't. So if you tell me, I probably won't respond. I won't say anything directly, just so that we don't get into a dispute. But I do not practice any kind of. I don't get into that. Another one is fortune tellers. Fortune tellers is the same thing. You are going to someone who you're looking for to give you information that you should only get from God. That's really simple. So you trust your future to the Lord. I always like to bring up the story of my father who, it's always kind of a joke because my father had this great sense of humor, but he did go to a fortune teller in 1945. And she basically told him he'd only be around for 5 more years. And he held that over my mother's head for the next 40 years. Yep. Didn't work. Actually, was it more than that? It was, yeah. Okay. So anyway, 1940. Okay, that would fit. So, yeah. You trust in the Lord for everything. And so you look at that, but you understand, you want to have an understanding of why you don't engage in those things. And this is what examination conscience generally don't do. They just give you a whole list of sins just like this does and tells you what not to do. But you need to understand the reason why. You need to understand everything about this. And granted, space is limited, even with this card here. But it's important to understand, not just go through this list of sins and say, have I done this or have I done this or whatever. It's to look at what your relationship with God is and what is standing in the way and what is leading you to turn away from the Lord, or what is leading you to embrace something more than God, what is leading you, all these things. So it begins with prayer. Prayer is absolutely essential, and having that experience with the Lord. This is something the saints always taught. Having that experience, that relationship with God that deep relationship, very profound. So that's why prayer is essential. And then if there is something that you say, well, I'm a Catholic, but I can't accept this, you have to understand why. And you will find, and even though you're called as a Catholic to accept Catholic teaching, anything you disagree with, you have to investigate why. And you will probably find out, as I've said already, either a teaching you disagree with is not Catholic teaching, or there is a very solid wisdom behind the teaching that leads you to understand why the church teaches what it does. So, and basically, there's those two problems that come up. And that's why it's so important that something simplistic doesn't help you. It isn't your source of understanding as much as looking into the deeper issues. What is the real issue going on? Which is why I hate this very simplistic examinations of conscience. We'll talk more on the other side of the break. Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WROL 950 AM and WROLradio.com at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us at our parish website, that's St. AnthonyAlston.org. That is StAnthonyAlston.org. Let others know where you can find us and spread the word about the Catholic Audio Media podcast. We're back, and I guess we're looking at this the detailed examination of conscience, and it's not that I have a problem with it, it's that you need to see the bigger picture in order to understand this. Because what happens is, obviously I hear confessions. You might see someone who reads something like this, and this happens not a short amount of times, or small amount of times. Failed to keep vows. Have I failed to keep vows or promises that I have made to God? Now, you'll have someone who comes up and says, hypothetically, I promised to the Lord that I would pray the rosary every day for the rest of my life, and I didn't do it yesterday, and therefore I am in sin. No, you're not. Okay? First of all, never make a promise for the rest of your life. Make a promise for tomorrow. Make a promise for today. When you're in relationship with God, never make a promise for the rest of your life, because we live our faith one day at a time. Secondly, if you promise to do something like some devotion every day of your life and something happens that you don't do it, St. John Vianney teaches that's not a sin. Just let it go. It has no connection to sin whatsoever. So this is what St. John Vianney teaches. So if you promise to say the rosary every day of your life and you forgot to do it, or you didn't do it, or you got too busy, or you just didn't want to do it, that's not a sin. I say the rosary every day of my life. So and occasionally I miss. So I'm not telling you not to pray the rosary. I'm telling you that don't get lost in this whole aspect, which is sometimes what these simplistic examinations of conscience lead you to do. It's to get you into a panic. Oh, I committed a serious sin. No, you didn't. You didn't commit a sin at all. That's from St. John Vianney. So it's important to understand this. And so it's really important to have a good practical understanding of your faith. So it brings us back to something I preach all the time. Is something a sin? You have a list of all the things that you should or should not be doing, but there's no spirituality behind it, and that's the issue I have with this. Now, it also has a thing on the Ignatian Examen, which is using Ignatian spirituality, which is a spirituality. But when you just have a list of this is a sin, this isn't a sin, or this is did you do this, didn't you do this, there's no spirituality behind it. And there's something I found here that gives that really highlights this extremely well. It's actually grammatically incorrect. Have I eat or drank? So it should say eaten or drank within 1 hour of receiving communion other than medical need. First of all, it's incorrect. Besides grammatically incorrect. You can drink water right up until you receive communion. That's perfectly acceptable. So drinking water is fine. But why is it? Why is it that you are supposed to spend an hour before receiving communion? It's because you are coming to receive the body and blood of Christ. It is to dispose yourself. None of that is written here. It's to dispose yourself properly because you're coming before the Lord. So the issue is you encounter God on his terms, not on your terms. So it's to really bring in the reverence of coming to know the Lord. Okay, the reverence of what you're doing, the reverence of you receiving the body and blood of Christ. But this is a rule that I always get a kick out of because since the day I was ordained and then went to my first parish, I have always been bothered by one aspect of this rule. Now, basically, as you see, it says for 1 hour prior to receiving communion, don't eat anything. This says don't drink anything, but you're welcome to drink water. It says nothing about smoking. I've always been bothered by the fact that people think they can smoke themselves to death prior to receiving communion because there's no rule against it. And in fact, there isn't. And again, that goes back to the spirituality. No, don't smoke either. But offer yourself up to the Lord with proper disposition. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.